Welcome again. It is noon and we will begin our presentation. I'll turn it over to Jean Lloyd-Jones, our moderator.
Good afternoon. I'm Jean Lloyd-Jones, and I'm just thrilled to see so many of you joining us to salute Iowa's women politicians. This is the final program in a series sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, the University of Iowa Pentacrest Museums, and the University of Iowa Public Policy Center. The program is to commemorate the anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. At the same time, we celebrate another centennial. As the 19th Amendment was being ratified by the states, the National American Women Suffrage Association, how's that for an organization's name, was having its last convention. The recently elected president of that organization was Carrie Tubman Catt, who grew up on a farm near Charles City, Iowa. And in her parting remarks to the delegates, she urged them to think about the future and what was going to happen when women actually had the vote. And she encouraged them to found a new organization, which would probably only last about 5 years. The delegates listened to her and voted to establish the National League of Women Voters. So you see, we have two great organizations to commemorate, actually in 2020, but we're a little late this year. Now, every woman in this audience knows that women's achievements mostly go unnoticed and unrecorded. And if you don't know that, just ask any of the people who tried to document the history of the last 100 years for women. The project that we're launching today is an attempt to capture some of the history of the women who have served in the Iowa Legislature or in statewide or national office. The impetus for this came from 50/50 in 2020, a nonpartisan organization which was co-founded by Maggie Tinsman and myself in 2010. The goal was to have 50% of the seats in the Iowa Legislature, 50% of the Iowa delegation, and the office of governor held by women by the year 2020. Some of these goals have been met. One has been exceeded, but the number of women serving in the state legislature only increased from 23% to 30%. So you see, we have a long way to go. As our contribution to the 19th Amendment commemoration, we felt that a video to honor women in politics would be appropriate. John Colshaw, the Jack B. King University librarian at the University of Iowa, had a better idea. He suggested that we partner with the University of Iowa Libraries and produce a website. And now he will tell you why it's a website and why it's important. John?
Thank you. Thank you, Jean, so much. I'm really delighted to be here today and to have the opportunity to participate in this event, and I'm especially honored to be the only male among the panelists. So thank you for letting me crash this party, if you will. It's really my pleasure to be here. So as Jean mentioned, she and I visited a couple of years ago about her involvement with 50/50 in 2020 in that nonprofit group, and with her idea to create a video honoring women politicians. I thought it was a great idea. I thought it would be a valuable resource, but I was also concerned that it would quickly become static and dated, or worse yet, that it would be sitting on a shelf on a DVD or lost somewhere on YouTube. So speaking of YouTube, did you know that 300 hours of video content are uploaded to YouTube every minute, and that almost 5 billion videos are watched on YouTube every day? As a librarian, that tells me that some curation is important if you want your video content to be discovered and used. I suggested to Jean that the libraries could help gather and present the same video content on a website in a timely, dynamic, and curated fashion. The University of Iowa Libraries has worked for years to collect, preserve, and share the history of Iowa women through our Iowa Women's Archives. We also host the Digital Scholarship and Publishing Studio, a group of staff that help faculty and students design and implement digital scholarly research projects from inception to archive, as they say on their webpage. Undertaking this project in collaboration with Jean and other campus partners seemed like the ideal way for the libraries to contribute to the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, and also to continue working with 50/50 in 2020 on their goal of encouraging women, Iowa women, to become involved in politics. One of my favorite catchphrases is that the 20th Century Research Library was a place where faculty and students came to consume information. The 21st Century Research Library, though, is a place, or really an entire organization, that participates actively in the creation of new knowledge. The website that you are about to see is a perfect example of that. It builds on the library's expertise of collecting and preserving information and allows us to provide trusted access to primary source materials for research and study, no matter the format. The studio helped to build it, and you're going to see some great visualizations here. And going forward, the IWA and the studio will help to maintain and build on this resource. I can envision this new resource, this new website, being used by the general public, by K through 12 students, or researchers in higher ed. Last week, I attended, virtually of course, the biennial conference of the Association of College and Research Libraries. In one presentation, Katrina Davis Kendrick, the dean of the library at Winthrop University in South Carolina, said, "Libraries are connectors, not necessarily the end place." I hope this website allows the UI libraries to continue to be a connector to the campus and to all 99 counties and beyond, highlighting the remarkable history and bright future of women in politics in Iowa. So thanks again for inviting me to be a part of this event. I'm pleased to introduce you to my colleague, Nikki White. Nikki is the Digital Humanities Research and Instruction Librarian in the UI Library's Digital Research and Scholarship Studio. And as I do that, I'm going to try to play this drum roll to unveil the website at Jean's request. And there you go, Nikki. Thank you so much.
Nikki,
Okay.
unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay. Apologies. Um, as I was saying, hi, and thank you for that really wonderful introduction. This project has been a year in the making, and a lot of people have worked really hard on it. So I'm thrilled to finally be able to share it with you. I present to you a salute to Iowa women politicians. There are three major parts to the site. The women's movement, which is a historical piece, Pam Steck, working with the League of Women Voters and the Iowa Women's Archives, put together this really lovely narrative exhibit about the history of women in Iowa politics over time and how things have changed. It includes a lot of really amazing pieces from the Iowa Women's Archive. So I strongly encourage everyone to give that a look to learn more about the context of where we're at in history and what it's taken to get here. A major piece of this site is the representation of kind of how things have changed over time and across the state. This is the area of the site where we really have our biographies of all of the different women who have served. We hope to expand those in time. And our hope is that people can come here and learn, to be able to answer specific questions that they may have about our history. You can see how the percentage of representation has changed over time and what women have served. If you're interested in a specific year, you can also scroll. So for instance, if I want to see what was the state of the legislature when I was born, I can come directly to that year and see the list of women who were serving at that time and how far into the legislature they had made it. I can also see if I'm interested in a specific county, for instance, I can look here at this map that was put together and scroll, same thing, through time and see how the election of women has spread over time. But then I can also look at any particular county and see how many women have served in the Iowa House or in the Iowa Senate over time, and what was the year span they were serving. So I can switch and look at the Senate as well. You can see in both cases that Polk County is kind of ahead of the curve, so we hope to all get there. I can also, if I am looking for a specific person, for instance, say I know my great aunt was serving in the legislature at some period of time, but I'm not sure when. I can go here and look through all the women who have served in the legislature and find her by her last name. We also have, if we have an interview for them on record, then I can go directly from this listing to hear her words and see what she had to say. And then of course we also have a listing of everyone who has served at the statewide executive level or in federal office. So watch this space, as they say. This is an area of the site that we hope to see expand a lot over time. As more women are elected, they will be added to this piece of the site, and we hope to also expand out the information and the biographies that we have on them. For me, the most exciting part of the site is Voices, which is all the interview work that Jean and the ladies of 50/50 by 2020 have put together. They interviewed nearly 60 people for this wonderful set of oral histories. And so you can see we have in really amazing responses from women across the legislature and in office, looking at such important topics as, how have men's attitudes changed in the time that women have been serving? What should someone know if they're going to run? You know, encouraging other women to also run for office. We also have some really fantastic tributes that have been put together about influential women who are no longer with us, but who left a lasting impact with their service. And then we have the introductory clips of interviews from every woman who was included in this effort and who was able to take the time to speak with our interviewers. So there's a lot of really amazing material on here. I highly encourage you to watch all of it. But I will actually share a few seconds of one of these clips with you.
I think women are extremely effective and are finally being listened to. I think for a long time it was kind of a good old boys club, and so you really had to kind of elbow your way into the rooms and be heard. But what I find about women is they do their homework.
Every new woman that comes in changes it bit by bit.
Women are problem solvers. That's what politics is, problem solving. And that's why I'm very keen on having more women in the legislature and why I am the co-chair of 50-50 in 2020. I want 50% of the Iowa legislature to be female. 53% of the voters in Iowa are female. I'm not trying to be the majority. We're just trying to be equal with you guys.
So as you can see, there's a lot of really wonderful material on here. We hope to expand it in the future. This material is also going to be archived in full by the Iowa Women's Archives, so that it has a lasting place in our history. I also want to kind of nod to a lot of people worked very hard to make this happen. I'm very grateful to Jean, who has guided us through this project, to Pam Steck and Sarah Tate, who did a lot of the content work on the site, both with the exhibit and doing the video editing. The IWA, the Iowa Women's Archives, was really key. We have a lot of students who helped scan materials, who helped style the site and do data entry. A lot of people in the studio as well helped with project coordination, with technical elements, with getting videos captioned for accessibility. This project involved the hard work of a lot of people, and I'm very grateful to all of them and very excited to be sharing their work. If as you look at the site, if there are ever any questions or comments, additions, corrections, I'm sure there may be typos and things that may have been missed. You can always contact me. There is a link on the site to contact me with questions. If those really should go somewhere else, I can always send that to where it needs to go. But I'm excited to hear what you all think of it, and I'm very happy to share it with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nikki. Does anybody have any questions right now for Nikki? If you do have questions, we ask you to type them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And we will get to as many questions as we can. So if there is not any right this minute, we're going to move on. Susan B. Anthony, who is another great suffrage leader, believed that in order for women to achieve equality, they would have to have the vote and help make the laws. Now you're going to hear from two Iowa women who dared to step up and put their names on the ballot. And they are now in Des Moines making a lot of laws. Both of them were elected in 2018. There's one from each party and one in each chamber. And without further ado, I'm going to call on our first speaker, who is Senator Chris Knoyer from Scott County. Welcome, Chris.
Am I up? Am I ready to go?
You are up and ready to go.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you, Jean. It is just an honor to be here with Representative James to be part of this unveiling of a website. So as you all probably know, Iowa is a citizen legislature. So we only meet from January to April, and the rest of the year we are regular citizens who have jobs and families and home lives. And in my day job, I am a website designer. So I am very excited to see this website and all the wonderful content, and that it will be a living and breathing thing that will evolve as more women, as we get more content and more women become involved in the legislative process. So this is absolutely fantastic, and I am just honored to be part of this unveiling. So you gave me several questions to address, and I only have 10 minutes to do it. So, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. But one of the questions was, why did I decide to run? I did not grow up thinking I was going to run for office. It certainly was never on my radar. You know, I was involved in my community. You know, I was in clubs in high school and in college, and then involved in my community. But when I had kids, I really got involved with things that, you know, my kids were involved in. I coached soccer teams. I was a Cub Scout den leader, and I did things with my daughter's Girl Scouts, and, you know, anything my kids were involved in. And then of course, when they got into school, I got involved with the PTA. And then I became PTA president, and something happened that really impacted me personally. The tragedy at Sandy Hook happened in December of 2012, and the victims in that first grade class happened to be the same age as my twin boys, who were first graders at the time, and that really struck me very personally. And so, you know, PTA president, I didn't even know who my school board representative was at the time, but I looked him up on the website, and I called him to ask what we were doing to keep our kids safe at school, and he didn't return my phone calls. He didn't respond to emails. He didn't respond to my phone calls, and that is probably not the thing to do for the PTA president, because it was a very important issue for me, and I was really quite upset that I was not getting the responsiveness that I thought was appropriate for this particular issue, keeping kids safe at school. So a few of my friends heard me complaining about it and said, well, if you don't think he's doing a good job, you should just run for his seat. And I thought, whoa. What do you have to be a lawyer? Or, I mean, I have no idea what qualifies me to run for school board. And they said, well, you've got kids in the schools. I had 4 kids. I've got kids in the schools. I'm involved. I know what's going on. And you just basically have to live in the district and care about what you're running for, which I guess you know, it hadn't occurred to me, but I checked both of those boxes. So with encouragement, I reluctantly got my petition, and I ran for office, and I beat him with 78% of the vote. So I think, so that was a good experience for me to win that election. And then I ended up running for a second term and became the president of the school board, and really got involved with meeting with my legislators to go over, you know, priorities and advocate for priorities for public schools and public education. So I got to know my local legislators. And as I was advocating for education, I became, you know, I started paying attention to other issues that were important to me. You know, sometimes we just get busy with our lives and we don't even pay attention to the, you know, the process and the legislature, the legislative process, and how these policies affect our lives. But I really started paying attention and really getting involved, and I was encouraged to run for the state Senate. And I wasn't really sure I wanted to do that. I really loved being on the school board. I loved, you know, it was a local thing, and I got to see the impact of, you know, the students in front of me. But, you know, people encouraged me to run and said I could do more for education in the state of Iowa as a state senator. So it took a lot of encouragement, and I will give all the credit in the world to 50-50 in 2020. Jean and Maggie Tinsman were very, very supportive of me. I went through several of the 50-50 and 2020 trainings. I did Blueprint for Winning, or Blueprint for Running, and Step Up, and a lot of the things that kind of helped me understand all the things that it took to run for office and kind of take the mystery out of it. And with the support of women that have gone through it before, that really, really helped me have the courage to step up and run for office. So I love everything that 50-50 and 2020 has done to impact the number of women that have stepped up and run over the last 10 years. That was absolutely huge for me, and I know that it's been a big part of why other women in the state have run too. So I did run, and I won the seat, and then I was vice chair of education for my first 2 years, and now I'm the chair of the $1 billion education budget. So in addition to that, I'm now an assistant majority leader. I was voted by my colleagues to be an assistant majority leader this year, and then I also serve on state government and natural resources and environment and the appropriations committee, and those, these are all things that are important to me. So I'm glad to be able to have my voice on those committees. But something that Nikki had mentioned, that there are more women that are serving in the legislature from Des Moines, and I think a large part of that has to do with the fact that they're close to their families. They're getting to go home every night with their families. And, I have a 2.5-hour drive to Des Moines, and I know Representative James probably has to travel farther than that. And so, that as women, we wear a lot of hats in life. And I remember one time Oprah Winfrey said that you can do it all, just not at once. And, that really bothered me that she said that, because nobody ever says that to men. But I think that, and people did worry about me when I put my name in the ring for running for Senate. People said, well, what about your kids? And I'm like, do you ask male legislators, men that are running for office, do you ask them about what's going to happen to their kids? Probably not, right? So obviously I had my kids well taken care of by their father, the co-parent, and I took care of that. But that is something that women have to face when, especially those of us that have to travel pretty far for 3.5 months to spend 3 nights a week in Des Moines to do this job. So that did impact me, but I think that more fathers are very involved in the lives of their children, and I think that more women are stepping up to serve, even when their families are very young. In fact, Representative Jones just had a baby last week, so right in the middle of session, and she'll be bringing that baby up in her sling, and I think that's just a really good model for how we as women are problem solvers, like Jean had mentioned, and how we make things work. So it is something that was way out of my comfort zone. I'm a computer person. I have a degree in computer science, and getting up and talking in front of people has never really been my forte. But you go knock on doors and you get to know people, and you put your message out there. And I think people are looking for pragmatic leaders who are problem solvers and don't get involved in those partisan politics and all the nonsense and noise out there. We dig in and we problem solve and we get things done, like Maggie said in the video. So I think it's important that we have people in the legislature that have a lot of diverse backgrounds and education and experiences, because I think it lends to the quality of the conversation, and I think it leads to better policy for all Iowans. So I've been very proud to serve with I think we have 10 in the Iowa Senate now. And Marionette Miller Meeks went on to become our congresswoman, and so we've had some good women that started in the state legislature that moved on to the federal level, and we're very proud of them. And something I would say is, like, a lot of women will say, oh, it's not the right time. Well, you know what, it's never the right time. You're never going to find a perfect time to jump in and run for office. So I would say just go ahead and jump in the deep end and start swimming, and you will be amazed how many people will support you. There's so much support system throughout Iowa, and I really have so much respect for women like Jean Lloyd Jones and Maggie Tinsman, who really paved the way for women like me and Representative James to be where we are today. And I really feel like, the initiatives and the things that we're doing today will continue to widen the path for women and encourage women to step up. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved locally with boards and commissions in your area. We're always looking for women to step up and serve in those capacities. And as you become comfortable with those areas, you can become more involved at the city council level or school board, and really just kind of dive in there, and you will, I find it to be very gratifying work, and being able to share my experience. And I found that it's very receptive here up at the Capitol. But again, that's over many, many years of women that came before me having their voice heard. So I appreciate them so much. And the fact that I can come down here and do what I do is just a true honor for me. And I think I'll wrap it up with that because I know there will probably be some questions, and I want to make sure. I know Representative James is in the middle of voting right now, so I want to make sure she gets her 10 minutes too. But thank you again for having me on here. It's a true honor.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. It's it's wonderful for us to hear from younger women. You know, most of us who have served are rather elderly now, and it's great to hear people like you coming up, and congratulations on your leadership positions. That's marvelous.
Thank you.
Is Representative James available now?
I'm here. Yes.
Okay, then let me just say there she is, Representative Lindsay James. And I have to confess that when I first saw, I'd never met you before that, and I thought it must be a man because the only Lindsay I knew was, you know, a male person. This is Lindsay James from Dubuque County and serves in the Iowa House of Representatives, just reelected for your second term, right?
Yes.
Okay, take it away.
Well, thank you, Jean, and for all those who are tuning in. I do want to say some specific thank yous as well, but before I do that, Jean, there is a debate, an ongoing debate in my family about whether Lindsay is spelled as the boys spelling or the girls spelling. So I'm Lindsay, and there's a debate about that. So that's yet to be settled. So you're not the only one. But yes, but I just want to say thank you, a couple thank yous here to Jean and Carolina for hosting and pulling off all of the technology around a Zoom moment like this. I want to thank the University of Iowa Pentacrest Museums, the University of Iowa Public Policy Center, the University of Iowa Libraries. John and Nikki, this website is incredible. And it sounds like with the endorsement of Senator Knoyer as someone who has a background in this. So congratulations to you all. And then of course, certainly to Maggie and Jean for all of your incredible work with the 50-50 by 2020 and just the investment that you have made in the public sphere in general, but just in women. And so thank you for that. And then Senator Knoyer, it is just an honor to be included in this conversation with you and to be working with you up here at the legislature. So, and then of course, thank you to everyone who's tuning in. I just have a feeling that, you know, I can't necessarily see you all out there. I see that there are quite a few participants on this Zoom, but I just have a deep sense that I'm probably surrounded by some incredible women who have done incredible work that has paved the way for me to get to where I am, and maybe even some women who will come up alongside with me and after me. So very honored to be here. Thank you. So I actually have a very similar story as well, getting into politics as Senator Knoyer. I did not anticipate becoming a politician or doing political work. I was actually spent my career as a college chaplain. So I'm an ordained Presbyterian pastor, and I have worked on college campuses as a chaplain in an interreligious context. So with Jewish, Christian, Muslim, atheist student groups. And I've served on college campuses actually across the country, both on the West and East Coast, and as well now in the Midwest. So I was on that career trajectory. And then my daughter at 6 years old, so I have two young kiddos, but she was 6 at the time. And we had just had a presidential election, and I'm stumbling my way through a conversation with her about the outcomes. And she poses a question. She said, you know, after I kind of had this conversation with her, she said, "Mom, does this mean that we need to build a wall? Mom, does this mean we need to build a wall?" And I thought in that moment, you know, regardless of immigration policy, wherever you stand on that, you know, that there are a lot of walls that have been built, a lot of division in our political and public sphere, and a lot of people who are struggling with that. And so I had this moment when you're looking in the eyes of, you know, my 6-year-old daughter, and she's naming at 6 years old some of the painful divisions within our political public sphere. I just knew in that moment that I had to do something about that and do something more about it, if you will. And so I made this internal commitment to run for office if a seat like this ever opened. And then several months later, a seat opened, and then I was like, oh no, what have I done? I've made this commitment to run for office, but I clung to my courage and I put my name in as a candidate. And then a year and a half later, after a very long and, you know, challenging campaign, but incredibly deeply meaningful work, I ended up as state representative out of Dubuque. And I have to say, I did just win re-election again, so this is my 3rd year up at the Capitol, and what an incredible honor to serve in this way. It's an incredible honor, one, because you are the mouthpiece of 30,000 constituents, and or at least, you know, I am, and Senator Kenoyer has 60,000 in her district. And I remember the first time I stood on the floor of the Iowa House and I pulled up that microphone and I began to speak, I thought, you know, this is not about me and my voice. This is about elevating the voices of, you know, people in my district and across the state. This is not easy work. It is hard work, but it is deeply meaningful work, and it's an incredible honor to be able to do that. So it was particularly sweet, I have to tell you, when my daughter stood alongside of me when I took the oath of office. I also have a very sweet son, and he was with me too, and it was actually quite funny. She and her dad stood next to me on the floor as we were getting sworn in, and then my son took over my seat, and he actually put his little feet, he was 4 at the time, he put his little feet up on my side as I'm taking the oath of office. His feet are resting on my side and I'm getting sworn in. He's reclined in my chair, just loving life in the Iowa House chamber. And I thought to myself, if this is not working mom life, I don't know what is. You know, here I am alongside my family, doing deeply meaningful work. And part of why I feel deeply committed as a mom and as a woman to doing public life and to being in the legislature is because I want my daughter and all of the young women around me to see, you know, my daughter in particular, see their mom contributing to the world in a significant way. And for other young girls to see women leading, not just in, you know, in the household and in business, but in the public life, And those who have gone before me, you know, here we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And this wasn't the reality for women for all time. You know, we have had to work extremely hard to make sure that our voice is heard in the public sphere, and, you know, and we have work to do. I know that you, Jean, mentioned some statistics, but I wanted to say some as well. Women make up about 51% of the population, right? That makes sense here in the US, but only 31% of state legislative seats across the country. So 51% of the population, 31%. And then as you, Jean, named in the Iowa House, we're still at about 30%. And so we do have a ways to go. But I also wanted to say, not only do we have a ways to go there, but we have a ways to go when it comes to actually empowering more women to step into these seats. I'm told that it takes about 3 times to ask a woman to run for office before she will even consider it. And if that is a woman of color, it takes 11 times. And so if you are a woman on this Zoom right now, I'm just gonna say, will you run for office? Will you run for office? Will you run for office? So that was 3 times. So I've asked 3 times. So now you're going to have to cling to your courage and do the same. And so there are some barriers, obviously, but the women who have gone before us have paved an incredible an incredible path for us. And now we are here to grab hold of the other women who are coming on up and bring them along. So please do consider that. I know that I am just an email or a phone call away and would love to be able to support and encourage you in your pathway as well. So thank you again for all of the work of this initiative, and it's an honor to be with you.
It was a great recruiting speech, Lindsay. Thank you so much.
Good. I'm glad. Absolutely, Jean. I'm here for you.
All right. Nikki and Carolina, do we have time for questions?
We
Yes.
absolutely do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Do we have some questions from our audience?
If we have a question, you can put it in the chat or in the Q&A. We are paying attention to both.
Okay.
We did have a question pop up in the QA while folks were talking, and Linda did respond to it. It was a request to interview someone specific, but I will generalize that out and say, Jean, are there any plans to do more interviews with women who were not caught up in the first wave here?
I would like to answer that. Yes, we consider this just the beginning. A lot of the women that we wanted to interview were either not available or, just didn't work out. COVID happened, and that really cut into our activities a lot. But we have really great plans for carrying this on and building on this, just this beginning block. Because, there are people, there are former legislators who have gone on to other things. Janet Adams went home and ran for their city council in Webster City, and then she was elected mayor after serving in the legislature. Kay Chapman, the same thing, went back to Cedar Rapids and was elected mayor. Mary Kramer was appointed an ambassador to Barbados, and she wrote a book about that. So women, when I retired from the Senate, I remember some of my colleagues saying, "What are you gonna do?" And I said, "You know what? There's a lot of life after the state Senate." I have had no problem finding enough things to do. So does that answer the question about future plans for this? All right. So is there time for another question? I would like to ask the legislators if the men are treating you like equals.
I can go first.
Go first.
Yeah, okay. I got to the Zoom or the mute button first. So, that's a great question, Jean. There have been some issues in the legislature, which I think are in the rearview mirror. And so when I came in 2019, we went, in my caucus specifically in the Senate, we went from 1 woman to 5 women, just like that. And our Senate majority, Jack Whitfer, has 2 daughters of his own. Senator Chapman, who's the president of the Senate, has daughters. And I've said this many times, I think some of our best supporters and champion of women are fathers of daughters. And, they want to make sure that their daughters get the same opportunities that their sons have and that they had when they were growing up. So I think, the issues that we had leading up to, several years ago, I think are in the rearview mirror, because I haven't had any issues with mistreatment since I've been in the legislature. I've never been told I have to take a vote that I'm not comfortable with, and I've been treated with nothing but respect from the men in my caucus and in the Senate. I don't want to say that it was surprising, but I'm really happy to say that I haven't had any issues with men mistreating me or treating me with disrespect at all. In fact, I have been heartened to see that they are just really open to listening to our thoughts and opinions. When we ran a behind-the-counter birth control bill a couple years ago, Marionette Miller Meeks, who's now our Congresswoman in Southeast Iowa, was a state senator and a physician, and Senator Carrie Kelker and I stood up in caucus and explained to the men why it was important that women have access to affordable and quality birth control. And several of the men came, we ended up passing out of the Senate 42-6, and several of the men came up to me afterwards and said, you know, it was really nice to hear your perspective, and it really made us understand why it was important, and that's why we voted in favor of it. So we are definitely making a difference here, and I think that we have some credibility, which is earned. You know, we've had to earn that credibility, but I think the men have been very receptive to our experiences and, you know, come to us and trust our experience and voice when we're, especially when we're dealing with policy that impacts women.
Yeah, great.
And I'd be happy to chime in as well. I would just add, you know, reference the concept that you all are putting forward, which is hard won, but not done. You know, certainly that shaping culture takes people to actually dive into it and be a part of it. And so that's certainly the work that, you know, Senator Knoyer was referring to is we get to shape a culture around here. And we get to be a part of the conversation around here, but hard won, but not done. I would like to see a woman in the White House as our president. We are continuing to move the needle there. But I would also like to see women lead the Iowa House Chamber and the Iowa Senate Chamber. And I love the comment about, I don't know if you saw this, Senator Knoyer, but someone commented about either of us running for governor, but maybe we should just both run, one as governor and one as lieutenant. maybe one day, and maybe we can Rochambeau maybe who gets to do what. So again, you know, hard won but not done. We have a lot of work, but glad to be doing this work and alongside you all.
Right, right.
We have a question.
I hear that there's been great improvement since the days that I served. Were you going to say something, Nikki?
Yeah, we have a question in Q&A. Janet Carl would like to know, do you have a women's caucus that includes both parties in both chambers? We did in the 80s, and it was a great way to support each other.
Okay. I think I know the answer to that, but who wants to take that? Lindsay, why don't you start?
Sure. Well, certainly I think it has been in the past. I do not believe that there is an active one now, but maybe that's the charge that you all are giving us at this very moment. I certainly think that when women come together across difference, across party lines, with different worldviews, we're only stronger. And, you know, I think that a women's caucus we've seen in different parts of the country work really well to actually, as Maggie Tinsman, you know, said so beautifully, we solve problems. So a great way to do that.
Yeah, and I would say in the Senate, when I came in 2 years ago, we don't specifically have a women's caucus, but Representative Linda Miller, well, she was a former representative from Bettendorf, and she's now the director of the Department of Aging. When I came in 2 years ago, she invited us to kind of a women's happy hour every Monday. And so several of especially of us freshman female legislators that, you know, came in without, you know, just trying to find the bathroom, right? And if we had issues or questions, she kind of took us under her wing and, you know, really helped us with that first year with those little Monday night happy hours. So it was kind of an informal thing, but women were invited. And it was kind of a nice way for us to share informally some frustrations or questions or try to find out how things work. And Representative Linda Miller really helped, you know, she really stepped up to kind of help us feel comfortable that first year, especially. But to your point, I think, you know, to Representative James's point, I think this could be a call for us to get that reignited, because, you know, I think especially as we get to know each other on a personal basis, we find that we have more in common than we have not in common, or that we disagree on. And I think and we are stronger together. And that behind the counter birth control was a wonderful bipartisan voice, where the women from both sides of the aisle stepped up and supported that legislation. And I think that we can certainly do that with many other pieces of legislation that affect women. And I think that legislation that is supported in a bipartisan way is the best legislation, because it helps all Iowans, and it is more representative of all Iowans. And I think I heard a statistic that 90% of the legislation that we pass out of here is bipartisan. So you don't hear about that you only hear about the 10% we don't agree on, but I think that bipartisan legislation, especially when all voices are heard, is the best policy that we can do to help all Iowans.
True, because if it's done just with one party, it can be overthrown by the next time the other party takes over, and it's just batting the ball back and forth. I would give you a suggestion. First of all, your leadership will discourage any caucus that is not the party caucus. They don't like to see small groups get together. But if enough women say we want a caucus, they can go ahead and do it. I mean, too bad about what the leadership wants. Secondly, I would suggest that you take one issue to start with and have a meeting about that. And it be an issue that is not one of those wedge issues. Take something that you're pretty sure you can get agreement from both parties on. And that would be like a first step. I think the idea of having a happy hour on Monday night, or whatever you said it was, is a great idea. That, you really need to build relationships, and it's hard to build relationships with the polarized environment that you're in now. So that's my wisdom for you. All right, Nikki, do we have any more?
Yeah, we have a few questions. Mary would like you to discuss your work-life balance.
Discuss what?
Work-life balance.
Oh, work-life balance.
Well, I guess it's my turn. So it is, that is a challenge. I have 4 children. 2 of them are actually in college. I have one that's graduating from the University of Iowa in May, and a daughter who's graduating from Iowa State in May. They are not twins. It just took my son 5 years and my daughter 3 years. But to that point, 2 of them are kind of up and out. And then I have 2 twin boys that are in 8th grade. So they're a little bit older and self-sufficient, but we come down here in mid-January through the end of April, and it's about 3 nights a week that we spend down here. And then I have my website design business that I have. Luckily, that is flexible. I can work anywhere. I have my laptop and a high-speed internet connection, so I'm fortunate that I can continue my business. Sometimes when some of the Senate floor debate gets long-winded, I'm sitting at my desk updating websites. So I have the benefit of having kind of flexible employment, and from that perspective. And then when I'm not in session, I actually got my substitute authorization last summer. So last fall, I was substituting in the schools also to kind of help support those needs. But in terms of balance, I try to keep my weekends somewhat free so I can go to baseball games and spend quality time with my children since I'm gone during the week. But I have found that the boys have picked up responsibilities at home, and their father has picked up some duties that normally I would have taken care of at home. And then, of course, I have the rest of the year, the summer and the fall and the winter to spend with my children, but I'm still doing constituent work throughout that time. But I think it's good for the kids to see that it's an important thing that their mother is doing. And they have some good conversations with their friends at school and with their teachers about legislation that's going through. So I think that they've kind of embraced it. It didn't stop my daughter from getting parking tickets at the high school. So nobody's special. Just because your mom's a state senator doesn't mean you can park wherever you want. So that's something that I was a little bit worried about how it would impact my children, but I think that they've been I think they're proud of me, and I think that they've embraced the fact that their mom has to be gone a couple days a week, and they've stepped up at home and with some responsibilities. So it is challenging, you know, and I know Representative James's children are smaller and younger than mine, but it is challenging. But I think, again, how wonderful it is to have a mom that steps up and serves, I think is going to be good for my children now and in the future, and hopefully inspire my daughter and my boys to be involved as well.
Yeah, very good. I'm thinking it's about time we wrap this up. Lindsay, will you be unhappy not to answer that question?
I am just so happy to be with you all. I'm sorry that we do have to wrap this up.
Okay. Okay, well, I want to thank both of you, Chris and Lindsay, for your leadership and what you're doing in the legislature. You're great role models, and you're living proof that public service is a noble profession. You know, too many people have bad thoughts about what a politician is. And we especially appreciate your taking the time during these last chaotic weeks in the legislature to pull yourself away and be with us. So thank you. I need to say some thank yous to people. This has been a tremendous team effort here. So I want to say thanks to Nikki White and your colleagues in the digital studio. That's my shorthand word for where you work. Because you and the Iowa Women's Archives will update and take care of this and maintain this website in perpetuity. I want to thank John Colshaw for your vision and your support, and and for that fabulous drum roll. You did a great job. I want to thank Craig Kronbaugh, who's the director of the Legislative Information Office, who sent me all of the photos of every woman who has ever served in the Iowa Legislature or statewide office. And that was extremely helpful. And to Sarah Tate, our intrepid videographer and editor. I want to thank Representative Mary Masher for her help in scheduling the interviews, and Senator Liz Mathis for hosting interview sessions, to members of the 50/50 and 2020 board who conducted some of the interviews, and to all the current and formerly serving legislators who shared your great stories on the website. I also want to thank Carolina Kaufman, who is the Director of Education and Engagement at the Pentacrest Museums, for hosting this meeting today and making sure that we were all connected. And Linda Schreiber of the League of Women Voters for promotion and marketing assistance. I want to thank City Channel 4 for live streaming and recording this session, not only this program, but the whole series. And our media sponsors, the Iowa City Press Citizen and the Gazette. And finally, thanks to all of you in the audience for helping us salute Iowa's women politicians. And I want to leave you with Carrie Chapman Catt's rallying cry to the suffragists. She said, "To the wrongs that need resistance, to the right that needs assistance, to the future in the distance, give yourselves." We have really come a long, long way, and there is so much more to be done. Thanks.